if you're in the desert and you are hot and in desperate need of something to drink, at that moment, luxury is that water that you're going to get, right? So it's not necessarily it costs $500.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it's at this point, this one element
That you
is what
need.
I need desperately, and maybe nobody has it. It's just this one bottle. So at that particular moment, that is luxury to you.
The episode is proudly supported by Orca.
And the episode would not be possible without your support. So kindly like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Lost in Lagos podcast.
Thank you.
I get lost in Lagos. Lost in Lagos. Feel the fire, feel the flame.
If you've spent any time around Nigerian fashion and entertainment over the last decade, chances are you've seen her work, even if you didn't know her name. She's the stylist behind some of the biggest names in the industry. Genevieve Nnaji, Tiwa Savage, Abudu, and Davido, to mention a few. She's the founder of Vane Style, and she took things further by building Vane Polish, Nigeria's first luxury nail polish brand. She's hosted TV shows across Africa and the UK.
But here's what makes her story even more interesting to me. She wasn't born into the fashion industry in Lagos. She grew up in Houston, Texas, spent years on the runway as a model, and then made a choice to move back and build her entire career from here. At a time where people were trying to leave, she came back home. Today, she continues to build businesses, mentor emerging entrepreneurs, and advocate for the growth of African luxury on the global stage. Please, welcome to the Lost in Lagos podcast, the one and the only Veronica Ebie.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Welcome.
Veronica, I have to ask, you had a whole career going on for you in the US, and you chose Africa and chose Lagos, not just to visit, but to build. So what inspired that whole decision?
To be honest, thank you for that question. But I moved back for two reasons. About, I think in 2000, and I hadn't been in Nigeria in years. Like, I grew up in Houston. That's where I went to high school. That's where I went to college. And then my parents had moved back to Nigeria when we were young. So between the ages of 7 and 14, I was here. And then eventually went back to the US to complete college and finish school and everything. And then my dad had passed away, and we came to Nigeria for the funeral. And I'm coming back, I realized that, wow, there's so much potential here. You know what I mean? Like, Nigeria seemed like there was a lot going on. And I was working in the US at the time, and I had just recently gotten married, and I had my son. And I was like, this would be a really good time to move back and just see if I can actually build something more permanent here. And then that's why, I moved back and said, I'll give it 5 years. And then if it doesn't work out, we'll just move back. And 5 years has turned to 16 years now, and I'm still here.
Yeah.
So,
But was like fashion always, were you always a fashion girly, even back then when you were also working in Houston?
yes. I was without knowing. So I always had a really strong interest to clothing, even though I couldn't really explain why it was that I would gravitate towards certain things before they had meaning or, textbook diction to it. I would either be drawn to shapes or silhouettes and textures and fabrics and so I always enjoyed fashion and would give my advice on what people should wear or proportions and colors and how to make your outfits more interesting before I realized that it could potentially be a career.
Become more.
So yeah.
So when you started back then, I reckon it's been a very long time, and now, is there any like major difference with like the fashion scene in Lagos? Would you say there has been?
Oh yes, there's a huge difference between 2010 when I first moved back and started in fashion and now. So the first thing I would say is we didn't have any identifiable fashion icons and mentors that you could actually look to. There wasn't anywhere you could learn to be a stylist or any structural educational value that came from that. There wasn't even a way to earn an income. I remember having a conversation back then with a friend, and I was like, I think I want to go into styling. And she was like, good luck with that. It's not going to make you any money, and I was very pissed off and very determined to make it, But we didn't even really, I think we had magazines that were even just upcoming at the time.
Yeah.
We had Arise, and it was This Day, and we had Genevieve magazine. I think there was True Love or something like that. That was from South Africa or something.
Like that, yeah.
And that was it. There wasn't really any fashion going on in Nigeria at the time, where it could be categorized. I know that there was maybe, I think, Omoyemi Akerele and Bola Balogun, who I had met at the time, and I think Bola had also relocated back from the US, and Omoyemi had relocated back from the UK, and they were also still relatively new. A lot of the designers were still relatively new. So fashion was very new at the time. There was no social media. So everything was very hands-on, to be integrated. There wasn't anywhere you could access information, for lack of a better word, or there wasn't anyone I could learn from, for lack of a better word. So you kind of had to learn on your own and come back with some sort of knowledge and just try to navigate your way through fashion at the time. It's such a big different scene now.
Yeah, and what was that shift? Do you think it was like the events like Lagos Fashion Week, or was there just suddenly a bigger interest in the designers coming up? And there must have been a shift where suddenly your profession became valuable. There was a value add there. I could really use one of these in my home.
Yeah, not bad.
Not bad at all.
Good morning, Mom.
Morning.
Welcome to Welcome.
Thank you. I'd like to get one of these. Yes.
I think we should go.
Go where?
Some will be ready to do on the ground floor and on the second floor. So I can't wait.
What are you, Elvis? Elvis. No, Elvis. Elvis, no.
I think overall, in life, culture kind of dictates what happens as we move forward. And we do have to give credit to social media and, technology plays a huge part in people being able to access information is always the first thing. How can I access information? How can I be better and more informed? And how can I improve? Now, at the time, I remember the biggest challenge I had personally as a stylist was pulling pieces to style clients and pulling pieces to style photo shoots and things like that. It was very challenging at the time. But you had designers, and then you had shows. So you had Arise at the time was huge. Arise Fashion Week. Yes. I think Lagos Fashion Week was a few years after coming, but at that time it was only Arise. And then of course the magazines were bigger at the time because you had more print. We started moving slowly to digital. So, and then you have you have social media and technology that started to make its forefront. So things started to become more internationally known, more global presence, and more eyes on Africa as people started to try to migrate their way out of Africa. And so you knew that you had to take your craft seriously. Another major thing at that time was stores. There were no visible stores where you could actually purchase your merchandise. At the time, there was only Temple Muse, and I don't know how new Temple Muse was at the time, but I think they were kind of relatively new. So where could you buy clothes? And that was the biggest, I think for me, the biggest shock. I'm coming from the US, I'm coming to Nigeria, and I remember even working for a magazine and saying, we'll probably have like meetings and drink our coffee, and then I'll probably pull from brands and stores and designers. And many designers didn't understand what it was to pull. There were no showrooms. There was no structure in terms of how fashion should work. There is a fashion show, buyers. There was no buyers. What are buyers at that point? You go and you see a show, and there was just no structure in fashion at all. Not today is what it is. So there was many challenges, what I was experiencing back then. So just trying to navigate and also create the structure that I was used to, and what I wanted to implement was very tasking and very difficult. But I know that the shift came from there being awareness, people wanting to improve, and just us growing as a whole even us refining in terms of how we use our fabrics, right? Back then, nobody was wearing Ankara. Nobody was wearing Ashoke. Wasn't even, it was ancient of days, like I would like to say, now we're using things like Akwete and Ashoke. Kenneth Eze helped us reform the loom. And there were different ways on how to use what is homegrown to create that value that we now all like and see. So there were.
I would say you really paved the way
Yeah.
to that, because there was so much education required by you to these designers who are just doing what they've been doing and just surviving.
Yeah.
And you're kind of opening a door that they didn't even realize was there.
Yeah.
For them to really just be more visible, to really just make some noise around fashion in Nigeria. And it's exploded.
Yeah.
I mean, you see Nigerian fashion on like Michelle Obama and the biggest celebrities all around the world, and there's a sense of pride there. And I think you should take some credit for being part of that movement to taking Nigerian fashion global.
Thank you.
I
I remember back then when I started working with Tiwa, for example, and I will say, I will give credit to a lot of the clients that I had early on. My first starting point will always be the celebrities, because they're the ones who would take the chance, and they're the ones who need it. Because back then, even now to a certain degree, many people don't believe in having a stylist. What do I need a stylist for? It almost seems as if you don't have a sense of style. And I remember then having a conversation. Tiwa had just moved back. She was trying to set up her team. She was also facing a lot of challenges in her career in terms of women, them understanding that, as a female artist is completely different. Your looks matter, your perception, and creating that budget. And a lot of things for her were out of pocket. And so we were all new, just kind of working together, and her taking a chance on me and me taking a chance on her, and us saying, you know what, style is important. The way you look is important. And you're also recognizing that you need to look a certain way, and us working together, and that helping me get visibility. And then even going on to work with Genevieve, who has an amazing eye for style, and just saying, you know what, let me help refine certain things that I'm looking at. Let me help bring to your awareness certain brands you're not even paying attention to, as a stylist, and just helping you collaborate on your total image. The biggest challenge back then I had was educating the designers. I remember it was me working with Mo Abudu, and her constantly complaining about the clothes, even me getting frustrated. She wants to look a certain way. You understand your client needs to look like this, and there's nowhere to get the clothes that she needs to refine her look. And so we would do a lot of shopping outside of Nigeria. And even when I would pull clothes from the designers who would give me clothes, because that's another thing, trying to tell them that, this will help your career, let's put it on these people. The clothes, the finishing was terrible. The sizings were off, proportions weren't great. Certain elements of detail on the clothing that had no point in being there. It was just really unrefined. And so I quickly understood that in order to get far, I had to do the work. I had to be the change that I wanted to see. And what was that going to be? Talking to the designers and making them understand that this is what your clients have a problem with. The reason you're not selling as much as you could be is because there are things with your collection or your creation that could be worked on. Maybe you're making a lot of boo-boos and you needed to make, a range, expand the range and make shirts and make tailored trousers, and everything doesn't have to be over the top and ridiculous. Some pieces can be, tuned down and be a bit more minimalistic as well, so that it can kind of be incorporated into the everyday style, which could be more refined. And so going to do an MBA and then coming back and helping them educate a lot of the designers during COVID, I started to create the Vane Style Advisory. So that would be working with the designers and helping them refine their collections and understand how to create a commercial collection from a runway collection, so that you could actually sell and make money to put back into your business. So I think that for me was one of the bigger changes. And so if I had to gauge on what I'm seeing now, that would be one of the biggest changes. And working with certain designers that I specifically know, I've seen their career improve greatly by the education that we've done as a stylist.
I think this is really interesting. This is also a conversation I was having with someone. And I like that in styling, you taught a lot of designers that we can have multiple aesthetic for African fashion. Some things can be minimal, some things can be maximum. I was going to ask you, and I still, much later, but I think I should bring it up here. What do you think truly defines Nigerian African fashion? Because of social media, people think African fashion has to have maybe Adire print or the dyes or like Ashoke. Are these just elements, or is this like the definition of our aesthetic?
Thank you. That's a really good question. So I honestly feel that what to me defines African fashion or culture is something that is rooted in your identity. And what is that? It could actually be a memory of you growing up, maybe in terms of how the sun rises. So it could be some sort of color or something that kind of reminds you of home. You could borrow a silhouette that is very Western, but your print is very rooted in your upbringing or your culture. Or it could be the fabric textures of how it's grown or how it's created. But as long as there is some sort of element that you identify with, I feel like that can be called African fashion. It doesn't necessarily, like you rightfully said, have to be about the print or having to be, because I mean, I've seen pieces where people are like, oh, it's not really speaking to me. This is very African. Or like but guess what? We grow cotton. We have linen that comes from here. So me tweaking it or creating some sort of embroidery on my print or on a plain hue still is defined as African fashion.
Let's speak about structure.
Okay.
I know that first of all, like in Nigeria, our music, our film, our fashion, they are mainstream and they are global, but a lot of the engine underneath is missing. What do you think is the biggest challenge in terms of standardizing or having like a global identity or mark for like Nigerian African fashion is?
So when I think of basically the reason why we probably don't have the structure that we need is because there is no real format and blueprint. In music, for example, or art, for example, there is some sort of structure, right? There are avenues. So if you're an artist, for example, you can record a song, you work with a producer, you have the platforms that are available, or if you're an actor, an actress, there are avenues for which you can grow your audience or grow your business or your career or whatever, right? We have Netflix, we have TV show. There's somewhere where I'm acting now, but there are, places where you can put it out there and actually grow. I feel like in fashion, for example, we don't necessarily have enough of those structural elements that can kind of help you grow. And let's remember that being creative as a designer is just one aspect of it. Many people kind of unfortunately expect our designers to do everything. They are the ones running the companies, they are the ones creating the structure, and they are the ones still designing and creating those processes. Whereas other global brands internationally, they have a whole operational structure. And then you have the designer. But even with that, you have a design team. Here, I noticed that a lot of designers are single-handedly the team in the design. Whereas there you have younger designers, they submit the ideas or the sketches, we work together as a team, and then as a body, we produce one strong collection. Whereas here, the designers are responsible for everything. So I feel that if we maybe change the mindset, I think that that's kind of where it starts in how designers structure and create their houses. I feel like that would be a stronger representation of what could be and what could go forward, right? But I feel like that's the element that's missing in terms of fashion.
Absolutely.
Where it hasn't been incorporated here. Yeah. I don't think I know any designer that works with a design team of designers and then they put forth a strong collection. It is still individual. It's very singular. Design,
and I think that's partly done on purpose because I think the designer wants to maintain the design aesthetic, the creativity. They just maybe don't trust that the design team is going to really bring their vision to life. And I think that's also a problem with education around, like, do we have enough fashion schools to really foster that that environment for those younger up and coming designers who want to kind of be part of the empires these designers are building. But you mentioned like a fashion house. do we have fashion houses? Like, can we take some of these brands, like, yes, fashion brands are going international, but sometimes they're moving everything international and kind of forgetting that they have a presence in Nigeria and kind of focusing on growing their brand outside. So how do we bring some of that back? How do we kind of foster those brands locally and make it a serious business, like where these fashion designers can actually build a huge career out of it and be as big as some of these big fashion houses abroad?
So there are two things. The first thing is, in terms of creating the wealth or making the numbers, right? They are making numbers. Designers are selling really well here.
Okay.
The missing thing is structure. In order for you to scale or for you to grow or for you to have a legacy or for to have a house and for it to be established, you need to grow. And in order for you to do that, you have to document, you have to have your archives, you have to have your team, and you definitely have to have that structure.
Right.
And I feel like the number one thing missing from these brands being able to get there is they just don't have the structure that is necessary for that. And down to it's as simple as operations. I was having a conversation with a designer the other day, and many times these creatives, designers come from a creative background. Many times they don't have that business background that is needed to build and mold and scale. They just, like I said, they just want to create. So knowing that I just want to create, I need structure, having a business manager, put together a team, and then putting the processes in place, which is your training, which is your documenting everything that's happening in your business and in your career as you grow, and then being able to hire people and teach them the processes of your business will begin to show the legacy that you want behind. Because as of now, I think if a designer decides that they're no longer going to design, that's it. It ends with them. Whereas it should still carry on, just like how Karl Lagerfeld has for Chanel, and you should be able to hire someone else to come in, and it never ends. It just continues the vision for the brand. So I definitely feel like the structure is missing.
And do you think like that structure can come from like the schooling? Are we missing like a fashion school, or is there a fashion school?
There are fashion schools. There are quite a lot of fashion schools. Now, I don't know if fashion schools here teach the business of fashion.
Okay.
I think, how to build a house, longevity, how to sustain, structure, operational, whatever. I don't think so. That's more of a business.
Teaching
My friend, I think that they're just teaching, they're coming in to learn how to design and how to pattern cut and things like that. Whereas this other part is missing from it. I'm not sure. But it is the one thing that should be taught so that designers can properly grow their businesses and scale. But even with that, there are many of our designers are very exposed and come from they're good. So I feel like you should want to kind of put those processes in place in your business so that you can grow. Yeah.
You spoke about legacy, so let's move away from fashion for a bit.
Yeah.
So right now, I know that you're advocating, a big advocate for African luxury on like the global stage. What do you think is missing? Because there's work to be done, right? Should our definition of luxury still be like thread counts or proximity to like Western models, or is there something that we have that should be a true marker or a true signal for luxury here in Africa?
Not necessarily, because I do feel that a lot of the things that we do here in Africa it is considered luxury. When you look at the root of luxury, it is something that is refined, it's something that takes time, right? There's not a number value. When people in true terms of what luxury is, it's not equated to a number, it's not equated to a figure. It's more about a value that is added on something, and that might be the time. I remember when I was in school, one of my professors had asked us this question, and he was like, of how to think of luxury. And he said, if you're in the desert and you are hot and in desperate need of something to drink, at that moment, luxury is that water that you're going to get, right? So it's not necessarily it costs $500.
Yeah.
It's the fact that it's at this point, this one element
That you
is what I need desperately, you know, and
Interesting.
maybe nobody has it. It's just this one bottle. So at that particular moment, that is luxury to you. For me, again, it's probably the time that it takes to create this one piece, because you do have brands that maybe produce one item or 5 items every month, right? That is luxury because only few people have access to it. And maybe the time that it has taken to put that item together, that product together, is considered luxury. So I don't necessarily think it's tied to a figure.
No, I think you have a point there, but do you think that then in that case we're too focused on luxury and not looking at a more mass market, like building mass market brands? Because people complain that Nigerian fashion is very expensive, and then it becomes less attainable for the regular person. Is there a reason behind that, or are there fashion brands that are targeting more of a mass, or is it because we just can't simply
Produce in that
produce
scale.
for the mass?
Well, I feel like there's a market for everyone. You know, I know people who bring in loads of clothing here and they sell in the open market. I also know designers here that make for mass market and they sell out a lot. So there is a high demand on every level. Now, when people say something is too expensive, I feel what they're probably looking at is cost per wear, or they're looking at what they consider to be the value of this garment that has been constructed together, right? Now,
Is it worth it?
Is it worth it? If I have 2 tailors and I hand stitch the beading onto a garment and it takes me 5 hours to do it and to produce, and I'm not necessarily using machines because we hand cut.
Right.
We have to dry it for 2 days and we have to hand dye. The time, to me, is considered the luxury for me to create that value that I put on it. Now, if you feel that you probably, it's not attainable, it's not worth the time that I've put on that, then that's absolutely fine. And then maybe there's someone else that maybe is producing something that's mass for you. But I do feel like there is a target audience and a target market for every value. And I know designers that sell things high end, and I know designers that sell things that are more mass and producing huge quantities, and they both still have really good numbers. I just think everybody just has to kind of find their balance.
Yeah. And I think people maybe underestimate how long it does take to produce
something,
a piece of fabric, even just to make that outfit. And we
especially if you are producing your own print. So there are a lot of designers,
which is very expensive.
It's very expensive, you know. I mean, and I became educated on that when I started having a lot of advisory and going to sit with the designers and seeing how they are making the pieces. So even at the store, when we have somebody that might say, well, it's a kaftan, why is it so expensive? We actually have the information. We will let them know and say, ma'am, this fabric you're looking at is imported, you know, maybe this is the cotton, and these are 3 types of, you know, lace that are, you know, as opposed to this designer who has just bought the roll of fabric from the open market and put together a kaftan. This one has actually created her own print.
Right.
So this is a little bit more unique, and this is the reason why this is more expensive than this one. It is the information, and once we educate clients on it, they do appreciate. Now, they might not be able to afford it, but you can see the appreciation coming. They're like, oh, okay, I get it, I understand. So
yeah, and I think one of the important things to note is the fact that we don't usually produce for mass. Therefore, the fabrics that they are buying imported are more expensive because it's smaller quantity.
Exactly.
So they're expecting, you know, mass purchasing of these fabrics, and they're not doing it. So it's 10 times more expensive.
Yeah.
So it's actually a lot more. I have so much respect for fashion designers, and I think, yes, education is such a big part of it, because you don't realize how much time it takes to bead a dress. I mean, I've spoken to people who say like it'll take like maybe 2 weeks to bead some of these dresses, and it's really intricate. They are works of art, really, like most of these pieces. So I do understand the value that goes behind it. So I want to ask about how people shop now, because you know, you mentioned that when you first came, and even when I first came, there were barely any shops.
There were none.
I remember there was like Temple Muse, Layla Fowler. There was like a handful of places.
Yeah.
And some were imported brands, some were local brands, but you really didn't get a good sense of shopping.
Yes,
here,
Retail
Yes,
here.
you did.
Now that's definitely
Completely changed.
So what has changed, and are people now wanting to go in store to buy there, or are they still buying mostly online and like ordering things like that?
So in my experience, I know that there are a lot of factors. So one, there's traffic and not being able to predict. I can quickly get into a store and come out, right?
Yeah.
So that would make you want to shop online. But then ordering online and receiving the item and realizing that it's not
wrong
exact,
size or-
is
yeah.
nothing
Like what you
what I saw
ordered.
online and what I'm looking at are two completely different things,
Yeah.
right? For me, when we decided to open the store, was just to service the client need. It was just because as a stylist, I'm constantly having to shop for clients or look for pieces, and by the time I drive to one store with all the traffic and Nigeria is really, Lagos is unpredictable, I was just like, this is ridiculous. I can spend all day in traffic trying to get some clothes. Why am I visiting 5 stores when I need to just find one store that can have everything? And there are stores, and there were great stores at the time, but for me, it was like, my sense of style is quite minimalist. I am very focused on everyday women looking absolutely amazing and taking really simple pieces and being able to curate your pieces together. And I noticed that a lot of the places where I would go and shop were all known brands, right? But I noticed as a stylist that there were so many brands that were unknown, so many amazing designers that were unknown, that I would buy things for my clients and they're like, who is this brand? Like,
person? Yeah.
what are you talking about? There's so many brands in Abuja that they're like, who is this person? And I'm like, you know what? They're available. And so to give them an even playing field when the demand was high, we decided to open up the store. So there are places where you can shop. And I feel like the biggest shift has, again, been awareness. And social media has now made everything come to the forefront. So you can actually see things and find things quicker and reach out and order things, and they can, maybe come in. But the experience of shopping and going in store cannot be compared to anything else.
Absolutely.
And I feel like one of the most important things for me was to create that avenue of shopping in your wardrobe, or like going to visit a friend and shopping in her wardrobe to find something to wear, and just that ease and comfort of how do I want to feel if I go into a store. I want the experience to be seamless. I want to be able to have options, and I wanted to create that same experience for clients, and that's the reason why we ended up having the store. And it's just easier for people to just come in and have that great experience of seeing the brands that they know, being introduced to new brands that they don't know, and still being able to put pieces together. I didn't want to create a place where people could come in and just find one brand, how the designer has created the outfit to be head to toe. I wanted you to be able to create things on your own and be able to pull from something that was just very easy and pairing it with something that was full of texture, and being able to create your own vision or your own identity of an outfit before you leave. So
I love coming into your shop, and thank you so much for creating that space, because
Thank you.
the way that you introduce different designers is really incredible, because you really do discover so many new brands, and it's refreshing, because you think, oh, thank God there's a place like this, and I really appreciate when people do that. I mean, I remember when we first started Lost in Lagos in 2010, we did a expo where we wanted to bring brands live to people. So we had a Lost in Lagos live, because we wanted people to experience the brands face to face, because at that time it was such a hassle to go out and do that. But how do you choose brands to represent in store?
we have a list, and we kind of make sure that we go through that checklist.
Okay.
So quality, production, how many collections do they have,
Okay.
Price points and stuff like that. If they're stocked in any other stores, visibility, and we kind of sit together in a group in our buying team and kind of shift through and determine if they should come in or not. Yeah.
So I think this has been very interesting for me. I'll just probably wrap up with asking, who are your top 5 designers of 2026? Like, if you're just a name drop in your shop, Let's do it in Vane.
Oh my gosh.
Putting you on the spot.
This is really putting me on the spot. So let me say this. It's hard because
We have so many
I
good
do
ones.
work with creating images. So many of the designers that I absolutely love are not even in my store for various reasons. Yeah, for various reasons. This is hard.
Okay, how about styles? Maybe styles for 2026.
Six.
Like, what are the fashion trends that are
People
currently
leaning into right now.
Also hard.
No, it's not hard because I'm very against trends.
Oh, okay.
I'm actually very, very against. But I will say this. So let me give you some brands that I feel like people should be wearing this year or take notice of this year that you might not have heard of before, that you might know. Okay. So one of my really strong brands that I absolutely love is Christy Brown.
Okay.
And Christy Brown Aisha is based in Ghana. And I feel like her brand really has this nice, cool mix for everyday life. And when I say everyday life, for the woman who is career driven down to the woman who just wants to be stylish. So that's a brand. If you are someone who is really into creating individual style, Christy Brown is a brand that you should shop
look out
from.
for, yeah.
Okay. A brand that everybody knows that I absolutely love is Bridget Aboshika. Bridget is for the clean, cool, luxe girl who is slightly edgy, but still, when you see somebody and their clothes are not shouting, but you're like, she looks so well put together.
Yeah.
Bridget. She's someone who, if you like to kind of put pieces together and you want your pieces to be timeless for the next 5, 10, 15 years, Bridget. Another brand that I absolutely love is Lisa Falawio. Okay. Lisa is great if you are feminine and you want to
lean into that femininity.
Yeah, Lisa is very fun. I feel like when I wear Lisa's pieces, I just want to be outside.
Yeah,
It's something they're very much conversation pieces.
Yes,
you can see that a lot goes into them. So I feel Lisa is great. Another brand is Falake's brand. Falake's brand is grounded and rooted in luxury. She gives you an extensive range of women's wear, from pants to trousers to corsets to boo-boos for every occasion. Just very resort ready. I think Falake's brand is. For a really new brand, and I'll just kind of, I could go on. There's so many brands. There's Emmy Casbit, there's Pepper Row, there's Heath, there's just so many brands. But a really good brand that I love, that is dear to my heart, and is very eco-trendy, but also a brand that every woman would shop from, is Babayu.
Okay.
It's a young designer. Her name is Aisha. She studied in Paris, and it's very eco-friendly, very ethical. But she creates a lot of nice separates that work. I think she's rooted in a lot of northern heritage, but it kind of shows through in her designs. And she's someone that people come and they buy and buy and buy from the store, and they don't even realize who this designer is. But she's also really good. And she's young and upcoming, and she's a great brand.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And for anyone who wants to know more about Veronica, please follow her, because you put out so much good content about fashion for the summer, fashion like for weddings, fashion. And I love that you kind of curate these style recommendations on your page. But thank you so much for coming in and sharing.
Lovely to have you, actually.
Yeah, it really has been great.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Okay.